Now, though, to the benefits of playing outside and how that helps children learn and develop. Outdoor education advocate Wendy Pirie says children should be encouraged to spend long periods exploring and to be free-spirited. She says children raised in New Zealand 30 or 40 years ago would spend 4 to 6 hours a day playing in the fresh air, but now the average is 45 minutes. Wendy Pirie is founder of an early childhood centre in Hawke's Bay called Discover the Den. It is set on 2 acres of land and preschoolers are inspired to explore nature. From Taradale, tēnā koe, Wendy.
Morena.
I hope it's a beautiful bay day. I trust it is.
Sadly, it isn't. It's a toasty 8 degrees with some rain, which actually we really need. So that's the gift of nature today, is a cool weekday. So we're exploring the puddles.
There you go, straight off the bat. There's something to go out and enjoy.
Absolutely.
Where do you come from on this? Why has this been such a focus of your endeavours?
I guess I'm very fortunate that I grew up in very rural New Zealand, in central Hawke's Bay. So I'm a Hawke's Bay born and bred local, and I'm the youngest of 4 daughters, and my parents were rural folk, and my dad was a farm manager on a great big sheep station in the back of rural central Hawke's Bay. So my childhood was spent outdoors, essentially, exploring all the beautiful things that were on offer. And that led to, I guess, as I've gotten older, a strong drive for the benefits that actually gives us as human beings. And like a lot of people that I speak to, once you have your own children, your perspective on life changes. And I'm fortunate, my husband and I, we've got 3 beautiful sons. And so having children certainly brings really clear perspective around what type of future you'd like them to have. And certainly for our boys, one that's connected to nature was really strong.
So you've done that for your own children. You founded this early childhood centre. And how have you developed this philosophy and your experiences into building something special here for kids?
So it's a bit of a long journey, really. I guess founding the centre is kind of a pinnacle part of that journey, and it really began as a youngster in those early years spending time outside, like I've mentioned. And growing up in rural New Zealand, there was just so many opportunities, and we had a lot of community events, and we were brownies and guides and all of those kind of things. And so my academic endeavours from there went into sport and health science and looking at how the physiology of the body reacts to movement, and a love of sport and outdoors and all those kind of things led me on this path to begin with. And the opportunity when I was 7th form back then, year 13 now, to go to Outward Bound, which was really a life-changing experience, actually. And when I met my husband, he'd also been to Outward Bound. So together we spent a lot of time ourselves outside. And once I had my children, it really triggered an interest in the relationship from an academic sense behind nature, movement, brain development, social competence, and how we develop as human beings. So that led me on an academic pathway through health science, population health and child development, with carrying out a master's thesis in 2010 through University of Auckland around a movement and language program and its effect on learning behaviour and social confidence of 5-year-olds. And as I was doing this, my own children were growing and developing, so they're young adults now. And my middle son, who's 16, is also dyslexic. So it was really interesting to walk that path as a parent and to try to understand and learn about what that actually means. And I guess we're really well connected technology-wise, so I was able to reach out globally and chat to experts around the world of what's current and ideas. And I connected with Angela Hanscom, the founder of Timbernook, who's in the US and is a paediatric occupational therapist. And so that began a journey of nature play and child development and how that relates. So my husband and I flew over there to do our training. We brought that program back to New Zealand in 2014 and launched it in the sunny Hawke's Bay and we developed that across New Zealand and Australia for 5 years, which was an incredible experience, and our children were a part of it. And as my children have got older and seeing them flourish into wonderful young adults, began the idea of what would this look like in a more formal learning environment, I guess, from a licensed early childhood centre perspective. And we're really fortunate in Hawke's Bay. We've got some wonderful members of the Ministry of Education. We have a wonderful visionary here in Hawke's Bay, Sir Graham Avery, who I've been fortunate to work alongside a little bit and provide some mentorship around getting things off the ground. So the idea for the den was formed, and we have, together with a co-founder, developed a site of 2 acres nestled in urban Hawke's Bay. We were offering these experiences for children 2 to 6, 5 days of the week from 8 to 4:30, and it's just been a real joy.
So what is that environment? What's this environment? Because you alluded to it. We've urbanised so much. A lot of kids now are growing up not only in suburbs and in cities, but increasingly, particularly our biggest cities, where there may not even be much of a backyard. And there might be the school grounds, which are very popular after school. But what have you designed? Have you designed this as not just a place to be outside and move, but where you can go and explore, where you can be away from roads, houses, people, noise?
Yes, absolutely. You've hit on every aspect of what the den offers. So we are just off a expressway, tucked down a little no-exit road with a private access way, and then we open up to a 2-acre play space, which is very wilderness-like. So there's big steep hills and there's full of trees. So it's not highly landscaped in terms of what you'd envisage as a manicured space. Colin, my husband, and I designed and built the playground, if you like. So we've got a very big welcoming sand pit for children. That's often a place which is settling and that sense of belonging. So a key part of developing the den was establishing what the cornerstones or the pillars of the philosophy are. And those 4 things are wellbeing, belonging, discovery, education, movement and nature. So part of my journey, once I'd carried out my thesis, was connecting with Jill Connell from Moving Smart, who's a wonderful advocate of movement here in New Zealand, and Jill and another colleague, Cheryl, who's based in the US, co-authored a movement curriculum for children birth to 7 called Move, Play and Learn with Smart Steps. And in that curriculum, it's tailored for parents and educators and anyone that is walking alongside children of that age group to support them and give them ideas of essentially how to play with children. And all of those fun play things that children do, there is always a underlying developmental benefit to it. So simply, nature's plan in utero, before baby's even born, is typically we are upside down, head down. So your vestibular or your balance system is starting to develop even before you're born. So nature is incredibly clever in how we're designed as human beings, if you like.
Can we talk about some of the basics about what is needed in those early years? I mean, you can start from the beginning with movement and play, can't you? But what is it that, say, children, once they're up on 2 pins, moving around and playing all the way into their primary school years need? Because, as I said, movement is one thing, but some complexity of movement, to work on balance, to work on trying things out and learning how things work and developing all sorts of skills, touch skills, sensory skills, that's a different thing. And what is the sort of play that allows children to develop and push their knowledge of their own bodies and how they work in a physical environment?
Yeah, so great question. And I think essentially when I'm talking to parents and educators about this, one of the first things I'll talk about is time and space. So a parent will always make the best playmate, especially in the early years, and giving time, uninterrupted time, being present, and space. So certainly under 1, what we talk to parents about is the floor or the ground should be the child's playground. So they're learning about themselves and their environment. So figuring out that I've got toes and feet by being able to put them in my mouth and get a sense that through my sensory system, gosh, that piece of my body is connected to the rest of me. So we learn through doing. So giving children time and space and opportunities and experiences to understand their own body and how that interacts with the environment is really where it begins. And certainly from in utero through to newborn, your first primitive reflexes in supporting you to be born, and then in those first months of life, are key to the platform or foundation for future development. So it's essentially a sequential journey that typically most children go through without us being aware, but what we're seeing more and more for different reasons is that children are in positions that they naturally cannot get themselves in or out of. And, you know, there's health and safety, so we're in car seats and different things like that, but our bodies aren't able to be in those positions independently. So just ensuring and providing parents with information around giving children that time and space. And it's okay just to be and lie under the tree with your baby and watch the leaves fall off the tree is really supporting their development. That's the first part of eye fitness. My eyes are tracking, looking how fast is that leaf going, being able to track it from left and right, and that's the beginning of being able to read. So what I've certainly been trying to do over the years is share that with parents and give them a opportunity to, it's okay, you don't need to buy the latest thing that's on the market, just to be and have that time together is really critical for early development.
Is movement indoors and play indoors and movement and play outdoors fundamentally different?
Essentially, going outside engages all the body senses. And we typically talk about the 5 senses, more often than not, seeing, hearing, touching, tasting and smelling. The 2 senses that we talk a lot less about is your vestibular or your balance sense or your proprioceptive sense. So what that information is and what is bridging that gap from my perspective for parents and educators between health and education. So for how a child develops, and the way we're set up for learning, I guess, in New Zealand is that we have an education system that doesn't necessarily look at the health of a child or the developmental journey of a child. So, for example, the most advanced form of balance is the ability to be still. So if we think about that for a young child, and any early childhood or new entrant teacher will instantly have a child jumping into their mind saying, gosh, yes, this child wriggles all the time. Their physiology of their body is sending us a message that perhaps actually they're not ready yet to be able to be still, because it's actually an advanced developmental journey. So how we develop that through our vestibular system is through taking our body of upright position, which is things like rolling, spinning around and hanging upside down, which we used to see all the time in how young children were playing. So that's where we saw that natural development, where more and more now children are in an upright position and not getting those everyday 4 to 6 hours of real free play.
We've all done the roly-polies down the hill. I still don't know why they were so much fun, but if I had a decent hill, I'd probably give it another go now. But this is actually a learning process, doing roly-polies down a hill.
Absolutely. So what that's supporting is children being able to sit still when they enter a formal learning environment. That is a social requirement, a formal learning requirement, whatever that may be. It's certainly how we used to play, and the developmental benefits of that haven't changed. And so certainly sharing that information. And at the Den, that's how children are encouraged to play every day.
It's interesting you mentioned the upside down thing, Wendy, because I'm thinking of it was a torture of instrument and certainly injuries in some ways, but the jungle gym, we were all over it. We were hooked around bars and getting ourselves into every kind of position going, or actually anywhere there was a bar, you'd hook your leg round it and spin round and round. Are there ways for children to have that experience even in this sort of health and safety environment we're in now?
Absolutely there is. And certainly one of the things, like I said earlier, that has been wonderful at the Den is working alongside our local Ministry of Education around what those parameters are in terms of regulations and legislation, and ensuring you just have the appropriate things in place to provide those opportunities, because they are absolutely crucial for children's development.
Are there, of some of the old-fashioned playground games, and I don't want to necessarily lead you to them, but, I mean, kids used to skip. Remember, we'd get a big skipping... We'd all skip together, and some dad, normally me, would take the rope out. But, you know, the hopscotch was universal. Without sort of doing a back-in-my-day thing, could you talk about some of those games that have survived or some that you're trying to reintroduce, and what it was that they were teaching and developing?
Yes, so certainly independent or free skipping. So if I'm working alongside children, that always makes my heart sing when I see a child that's skipping along and singing to themselves, because what that gives me an indication is that they are physically organised, they have gone through their developmental journey, and the one constant with children is they are all different and will develop differently. But what an independent skipping, singing child suggests to me is that they have crossed their midline, which is a term you may or may not be familiar with, but what that means is that how dominance emerges. So most of us are familiar with we're left or right-handed in terms of writing and holding things. So that's a developmental journey. So once children are able to independently skip and sing at the same time, so they're able to access that executive functioning part of their brain, because the movement part of their brain is automated. They're able to do movements without thinking about it. So when my children now say to me, gosh, back in the olden days, Mum, which is a bit grim, but still now we see children skipping independently, but it's a really great celebration of the joy of movement and providing opportunities for children to do that. But before they can skip independently, they need to be able to balance on one foot. So it comes right back to that early 7 senses around that vestibular system and that early development, that foundational development around rolling, spinning, being upside down, and learning about my body is where it all begins, and then that sequential journey through into being able to stand on one foot, being able to jump with 2 feet together, being able to hop on one foot, putting that all together and being able to skip and sing at the same time. So one of the things we did with the Smart Steps resource is we actually wrote a activity which has got 18 different sequences in it called Hop a Frog, which is a opportunity for parents or educators to look at how can I support children to learn how to skip freely. And there's always a narrative that's got fun and games and songs, so the children experience it as play. They're actually learning a really key developmental experience through that play.
Wendy, I don't know how widespread this is in schools and preschools. I know there's some Ministry of Health guidelines, but the kind of stuff that you're talking about that might have to be adult-led somehow by a parent or by a teacher until the kids learn it and love it and are doing it themselves. Is it very widespread in the formal education system?
It's not something, sadly, that's being offered in depth within teacher training. Certainly that I'm aware of. That's something we're talking a lot, and certainly the team at AUT, Scott Duncan, Nigel Harris, Grant Schofield, are all working hard on connecting education and health. So there is a lot of great work being done within an academic setting, and certainly the Active Play Initiative through the Ministry of Health. And when I'm speaking to teachers and parents around the country, it's really interesting. I always ask, have you seen this document? And sadly, a lot of them haven't actually seen it. So the opportunity for us to share this information, every parent wants the absolute best for their child, as does their teacher. So we don't know what we don't know.
Very quickly, if you would, before we go and talk about what we can see on our screens in the moment, which I'm sure is one of the modern challenges, what's your top tip for a parent on getting a child started on a love of this kind of activity if they would actually rather be reading, mainly, which they need to do, or on screens or somewhere else? What's your top tip for starting a fun habit and getting these kinds of activities part of daily life?
Well, certainly for young children, music is a wonderful medium. So breaking out into song and bringing back your inner child is a really wonderful place to start. I'm fortunate my name's Wendy, and often I'm called Weird Wendy because I'm no singer, but I love to break out into a bit of song, and children just adore the fact that you are able to be silly and want to play with them.
So humiliate yourself. Tip number 1, humiliate yourself.
Bring the weird
Yeah.
and just find your inner child and just be present, offer time and space together. And some movement. Certainly stepping outside if you have the opportunity to do that. If you're inside, put some music on and do some dancing. Holding your baby, dancing with your child, whatever that may be.
Yeah, and having a chaos room somewhere in the house where you just have to shut the door and walk away. Wonderful. Thanks very much, Wendy Pirie. You can learn more about what she has been talking about. There's a link on our homepage to her Early Learning Centre in Taradale, but also to the actual play space they've developed there.